Welcome to the Surratt Brothers Podcast, a conversation about church, sports, current events, but mostly church. Today we talk about things we have to have when we travel, whether we would ride in a driverless car, and how far off were some of the predictions we made for the post-COVID church. We also spent some time with Kadi Cole to talk about how churches can raise up more diverse leaders. Now join me and my brother Geoff for the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. So glad that you're listening. My name's Chris, and I am alongside my brother Geoff today for this edition of the Surratt Brothers. How you doing, Geoff?
I think we need to change the opening. Could we start that over? Because I think what it really should say, alongside my wiser and better looking brother Geoff, I think that would sound better.
That would require some truth, and I mean some non-truth, and yeah. I can't do that. I can't lie. So,
all right. Well,
I'll just say older, my much older brother Geoff.
Yeah. Well,
you doing okay?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good, except for the weak introduction I got today. I'm just going to take over next week and do better introductions.
It's not going to get stronger. Well, I am glad to be with you for hopefully the whole episode this time.
Right.
Because
so
last week.
So you're not dead, right?
I survived. Yeah. We had, if you listened to last week, in the middle of it, we had tornadoes in our area, and, actually had a couple spotted within a mile or two of our house. So literally when you and I finished our segment, and then right before Philip Nation came on, I was running to our safe space, which is our bathroom on the lowest level of our house. And we go even beyond that. We get helmets out. So we have bike helmets, and I have a motorcycle helmet because we had both girls home and we didn't have enough bike helmets. But so we're all sitting in this, we have pictures, but my wife won't let me put these out.
Oh,
we're all sitting in this tiny half guest bathroom with helmets on.
We gotta have pictures. We have to have pictures. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So I haven't been to your house. I haven't been invited, but I can imagine the size. I can imagine the size of a half bath. I got to tell you, no, I really am glad that you aren't dead. And mostly because I don't want to host this thing by myself. Like the Surratt Brothers all by myself. That's just strange. That's a strange thing. I don't want to try to rename the podcast. So, and Greg, he's not super reliable. So yeah, no. I'm glad you're not dead because we can keep doing the podcast.
Yeah, that's true. Surratt Brother wouldn't quite have the same.
You know what though? I could just call it the Surratt. That would be very Surratt-like to not only name it after myself, but then be the Surratt. Yeah. We're doing good out here. Gosh, it seems like we hit weather. We used to hit that place in Hawaii every time. Now we hit weather. Our Mother's Day was miserable, just cold, awful, driving rain. Some of us talked about the fact that, out here it snows sometimes on Mother's Day. We would have taken snow over this. It was just a nasty Mother's Day, but better is coming. The rest of this week is in the upper 70s, sunny, beautiful. This is why we live here.
This is why you're there for the next 2.5 months, and then you're back to snow and cold. I did see, Pastor Brady Boyd. I think he's in Colorado Springs, right?
He is. He's about an hour from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah, he just tweeted out a video of hail, major hail coming down today. Are you guys not getting that?
No, they promised us some storms. It's actually a little cloudy right now, but no rain or anything. Hail, I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast. Hail does more damage in Colorado than wildfires do. We have hail frequently.
That's crazy.
So you get your roof replaced. I haven't had my roof replaced, but I was talking to a roofer the other day. He said, well, here's a date of the last big hailstorm. Just tell your insurance and they'll put a new roof on. So.
Well, fun for you.
Yep.
All right. So, doing a lot of traveling. I actually took a little bit of a break from traveling. I mentioned that we lived abroad for a few months.
It's not abroad. It's a state.
It might as well be. It's 5.5 hour flight from the coast of California to the islands of Hawaii.
You know what? I wonder.
Japan had been quicker. They could be part of Japan, but they didn't move quick enough.
Well, I wonder. We'll have to look it up. I bet it's a further flight from California to Hawaii than it is from the East Coast to England. So England could be a state.
That is true.
which, by the way, side note, totally nothing to do with what we're talking about, which is normal for me. I've had 2 different people from England try to schedule meetings with me on July 4th, which I absolutely love because it gives me an opportunity to say, there's this little thing where we voluntarily left the British Empire and we celebrate it every year on July 4th. And I go, oh, yeah, that's right. You guys celebrate it.
That's funny. You should go ahead and have the meetings and just, celebrate during the meeting.
Right. Right. Just hang on. There's fireworks going off. Woohoo.
Here's the anthem. This is our flag still flying.
Right.
So anyway, I took a little bit of a break from traveling for the month of April, but I'm getting back into it. I was just in Pittsburgh. I leave tomorrow for another trip, and then immediately after that, I'm in Cali, and then immediately after that, I'm in St. Louis. So I've got about 3 or 4 weeks of travel coming up, and I'm a little bit out of the habit. When I'm traveling a lot, I kind of have my things and I kind of leave my suitcase. Sometimes I don't even unpack certain things. I just leave them in there. So I was thinking about that as I'm thinking about this travel. And for me, I don't know about you, but there's like certain things that I have to have when I travel. Like if I don't have these things, it's going to be miserable or, it's just not going to be as good a trip. So I was thinking about what are those, few things. For me, I have to have some noise canceling headphones, some really good noise canceling. I used to have the AirPod Pros, but then I've switched to the over-ear Sony, I think it's the MX 5000s or something like that. But they're great because they're comfortable. They last the entire flight to California. That was another problem with the AirPod Pros is that the battery would die at hour 3.5 and it's a 4.5 hour flight. So anyways, I have to have those, and you're not hearing the brat scream and you just kind of can disappear. Another thing that I have to have is every cable that I can possibly think of, like that will fit any car, that will fit my iPad, my iPhone. If I'm in some meeting that I have to share through HDMI, out of, anything, I have every cable. So I have this bag of they're not even organized, but it's just every cable I can possibly think of in a bag. And if I don't have those, I start sweating. And then, for California, I actually keep pillows out there. I have an office in California and I went out and bought the exact same brand of pillow that I have on my bed. And I don't know about you, but that's even more important than the bed. Like if I have the right pillow, it feels like what I'm used to at home. It's gold. So those are what I have to have, at least for most travel. What about you?
Well, a couple things. One, you're pretty picky. Like, I don't know if you noticed that, but you're pretty picky about things. And it kind of showed up there. Pillows. I have to have the same brand pillow. I've been listening. Did you listen to the podcast Serial? Like the one who put all podcasts on the map? For the first two. I haven't listened to the third season. Yeah. Yeah. So they're on a 4th season. Didn't know they did a 3rd season because the 2nd season was so bad. And the 4th one, I'm sorry, I'm off on this, but I listened to an episode. It's about like some of the torture. Yeah, exactly. If you put me in Guantanamo Bay and waterboarded me, I could not tell you the brand of pillows we sleep on. I couldn't tell you a brand of pillow that exists on the planet. So had to go out, get the same brand. So
when you have sleep issues like I do, those are things you think about.
You know what? If you took the word off, just issues, you just have issues. Yeah. And the other thing is I'm just not traveling much anymore. Like, I'll travel, but nobody wants me. Like nobody.
Don't you get senior discounts now when you travel?
Shut up. People are like, yeah, you know what, Geoff, here's an idea. Why don't you not come visit us? Like that would be a thing. Like what if we paid you to not come bother us? And so that's kind of where I'm at. So I did have when I was traveling a lot, exactly what you said. Like so business idea. I don't know if I ever talked to you about this. Here's my business idea. So for guys like you that travel all the time, at the airport, there's a kiosk, right? When you land, you drop your suitcase at the kiosk. They know all the toiletries you like. They know, how you like your clothes, all of that. They take the suitcase. They have your clothes laundered, pressed. They refresh all of your toiletries. And when you come back to the airport, you just grab your suitcase. It's already packed for you. You take it with you, and no muss, no fuss. What do you say? What do you think?
There was an actual company, I think it was on Shark Tank. And when I started traveling a lot, I looked it up, and it was similar to that. So what you would do is you would give them a heads up, like, I'm going to be in Orange County, California for this date to this date, and I'm going to be in this hotel. And they would bring clothes that you had picked out that you didn't own, but they had clean pressed, your style, all of that, toiletries, everything, bring it to your hotel, drop it off. So when you get there, everything's there. And then when you leave, you just leave it outside like your door, and they come pick it up. I thought that was a beautiful idea.
Same idea.
I guess it didn't work because the company is no longer there.
I still think there's something there. Sherry said, well, but how do you pick out your outfits? I don't pick out my outfits.
Who cares?
How many shirts do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, what about what they look like? I don't even know what they look like. And if I wasn't looking at myself on video right now and you said, Geoff, what shirt you're wearing, I could not possibly tell you what shirt.
Let's go with monochrome and it'll work.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. All right. So, so I don't have specific things, but I have rules. Okay. I have travel rules. These are non-negotiable. No check bags. If someone travels with me and I find out they've checked a bag, I will abandon them. Like I will get my own Uber at the airport. I've never done that.
Even Sherry. Does Sherry check bags?
Sherry doesn't check bags, except when we're traveling on long trips for vacation or when we go to Europe. That's an exception. I get it.
Okay.
But normally, no check bags. Do you ever get that? Do you ever wind up like on some trip with some rookie and like it's an overnight trip and they're checking a bag the size of an elephant?
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Now, if I go to California for like a couple of weeks, I will get the big suitcase and check it. But if it's like a 2 to 3 night thing, no way.
Yeah, I won't name names, but it's one of our nephews, and you'll figure out which one. We went with a trip on him one time. I think it was an overnight trip. Maybe it was 2 nights, and he had this huge checked bag. And it was like, okay, no. So no check bags. I have to have an aisle seat. I don't understand the window seat people. They don't make sense to me. My wife's a window seat person. I have to have an aisle seat. I've got to have a little room on the side. I don't want people crowded all over me. If you're weird, I need to be able to get up and get away from you. If I need to go to the bathroom, I do not want to ask my neighbor, can I go number 1, please? Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to go. I want to do what I want. So I have to have an aisle seat, which Sherry and I, pro tip, you and I both fly Southwest,
yeah.
You know this. Pro tip for non-Southwest flyers, halfway back on the emergency rows, the middle emergency row is 2 seats. So you get an aisle seat and a window seat. If you're in the newer ones, if you take your life in your hands and fly the 800 Max, it has 2 seats sides. Both sides. So that's Sharon. That's the seats we fly in. So she gets her window. I get my aisle. So no check bags, aisle seat. You're an aisle seat guy, aren't you?
Yeah. If it's a really long trip, like when I was coming back from Hawaii, I did appreciate a window so I could lean on it for sleep. But if it's a normal length trip, yeah. Yeah,
I've done an aisle seat for something like that. Also for rental car, I need the no contact rental car. Like I need Hertz does it, National does it, Avis does it. I don't know if anybody else does, but what I mean. You go, you don't talk to anybody. You don't answer any questions. Hey, what are you out here for? I'm out here for murder. I'm Tom Cruise in Collateral Damage. I don't want to discuss it. So I go straight to my car and let's see, who is it? One of them now, Hertz, I think it is at some locations on the way out. You just put your credit card, I think, or license. I don't remember which one at a scanner and it lets you out. You don't even talk to anybody at the toll booth.
I've done that one time. Clear does that for you at some airports. Yep.
Maybe that's it. I think that's Clear. Yep. So I need the no contact rental car. There's a theme here, right? I want an aisle seat because I don't want to get trapped into a conversation.
You want to talk to people. Yep.
I need a no contact rental car because again, I don't want to talk to people. And I need that digital key. People who don't travel may not do this, but especially if you're with Hilton, you can always get that digital key on your phone. So when you get to the hotel, 1, I still don't want to talk to anybody. And 2, it's so much quicker. Now I might not get my bottle of water because I'm a Hilton Honors member. I don't care. I can get water. But I go straight to the hotel room.
You're just a pleasure to travel with, aren't you?
I really am. I really am, because I'm not bothering anybody. No one is bothered by me because I'm not talking to anybody. And by the way, I noticed that your point number 1 was noise canceling headphones. That wasn't because you don't want to hear the babies. It's because I know you. You don't want to talk to anybody. So I also, good excuse on the AirPod Pros. What you actually meant was when you wear cans, when you wear the over the ears, people can see you have headphones and they won't try to talk to you.
There is truth in that. Now, when I travel with my wife, she makes the mistake of smiling at people sitting next to us, like if we're in the row, and it invites conversation. And I'm like, don't make eye contact and don't smile.
No, I did convince Sherry eventually one place. So she does that. She used to sit in like the middle seat so she could get a conversation going both ways. Like she loves that stuff. Every time she comes back from a trip, she said, "Oh, I met a lady on the plane." And I'm like, how did you exchange information? But a lot of times for our vacation, I've mentioned we like to go to Mexico. And, when you walk any place you go in Mexico to an airport, Cancun or wherever, Cabo, as soon as you walk out, there's going to be like 100 people yelling at you, wanting you to take their taxi or go to their timeshare, or you've been through all that stuff. And Sherry used to be like Jenny is. She used to smile and say, "Oh no, thank you. Oh no, thank you." Well, that's like spreading honey in a beehive. Like that was a bad example, but you know what I mean? As soon as they see a smiler who talks to them, they just descend. And finally I got her, I said, just imitate me and let's see what happens. And this is me normal, not me just in Mexico. Straight ahead, no eye contact, no conversation.
No social. Yep.
No social. We don't need any social. Boy, that sounded awful. I like people.
Well,
I like some people. There are people I like. I don't like, I like strangers. No, I don't.
No. All right. Let's real quick. This seems to be a theme for us. Nuggets. Last time we talked, they were down 0-2. They were looking not good. Timberwolves were, looking like a sweep. You even wrote an article where you trashed the coach of the Denver Nuggets. You called out his character and his leadership abilities. Basically, you said they're done. They're done. Yeah. And so flash forward.
Wait, before you flash forward, I did.
Yeah.
I feel guilty about it. Good. But I was joined by every sports commentator in America said the same thing. The T-Wolves are way better than the Nuggets. They have no chance. They lost not just two. They lost the first two at home. They're done.
Blown out on one of them.
Oh, blown out. Stick a fork at them. It's over.
So, flash forward a week. It's now 2-2. They played tonight. Is that right?
Actually, no, it's not 2-2. It's 3-2. They lost. Now? They won last night. So they swept. So they got swept in Denver. They went to Minnesota, swept Minnesota. The one game they blew Minnesota out, they beat them by one more point than the T-Wolves beat Denver in the beatdown in Denver. And then last night was game 5 in Denver. They beat them by 15 points last night.
Got it. So they're on the edge of winning this series now.
Which could be why I'm a little more crabby than normal, because I was up until midnight watching basketball last night.
So my question with all of that is, does this make you a fair weather fan?
No.
The fact that you were off the bandwagon at 0-2.
No.
You were switching coaches.
Nope.
You were calling out his manhood, his character, his leadership.
I did not call out his manhood.
You wrote articles that probably went viral, so what does that make you?
Okay. No virality. I didn't call out his manhood. I said he's an excellent coach. He made a mistake. I stand by that. He made a mistake. He led his team to do things that weren't helpful. No, I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm a true believer fan. I'm the kind of fan that lives and dies with their team. And that kind of fan, like when it goes bad for that kind of fan, everything goes bad. It goes back, honestly, it goes back to the Buffalo Bills, Houston Oilers playoff game. I don't remember the year. You remember the game when they're up by 32 points at halftime. They pull Jim Kelly out of the game. They put the backup quarterback in. Can't remember his name. Anyway, they put him in.
Future coach of the Colts.
Frank Reich.
Frank Reich.
Yep. They put him in. The first touchdown he leads them to, the first touchdown, I turned to my brother-in-law and said, it's over. The Oilers lost. They can't win this game. And sure enough, they lost. They didn't win the game. Goes back to that for me. No, I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm just a senseless fan. Here's what I am, though. I'm curious if you have any of this. I am a superstitious fan. Like, Michael Scott said, I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious.
Just a little stitious. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I am beyond superstitious. I'm extreme stitious. Okay. So to the point of last year in the finals, the Nuggets are playing the Heat. It's game 4. Nuggets are up 3-0 and they're playing terrible. And I hadn't said anything to my wife. My wife loves watching the playoff basketball. So Sherry and I watch it together. She that night had sat in my chair. We have these 2 recliners. She had sat in my recliner. I sat in her recliner. At halftime, I'm in the kitchen. I'm antsy. I finally yelled into the other room, we have to switch chairs. And she immediately jumps up and moves to the other chair. I get in my chair. Nuggets come back. They win. So I have to sit in the right seat. Last night, I had to sit in her chair because Sunday night, Mother's Day, when they played, I sat in her chair and they won. So I had to sit in her chair last night. Sherry said, oh my goodness, I'm having a hard time even saying this out loud. She said, Chris, out loud, after they win the series, she said that after they win the series. That is such bad luck. I had to go out. I had to sacrifice the neighbor's cat. Like, I feel bad about it. Their little girl's looking for Tinkerbell. I'm sorry, but I didn't sacrifice a cat, but we did perform a couple rituals to get rid of that. So here's the truth. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but we do it all. We do it all just in case. You never know. What about you? You have any superstitions with sports?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Although it's been so long since a team that I root for actually did anything, won in playoffs or were in a championship series. But yeah, if the Cardinals are in the playoffs, I have to have a Cardinals hat on while I watch the game. If I don't have a Cardinals hat on, it's, same thing. I don't go that far as like I have to sit in the same chair, but, I have to be wearing that. So yeah, there's some of that.
Yeah, last night after the game, Sherry said, next game we should wear some Nuggets, hats or whatever. And I said, we haven't up till now. We can't start now. So speaking of basketball, and again, this is so inside basketball, no one's going to care or know what we're talking about. But so they're having the NBA, or they had the NBA. It's kind of like an NBA tryout. It's where college players come, show off. Combine, show off for the NBA teams that are getting ready to decide if they're going to draft them. So one of them, of course, is LeBron James' son, Bronny, and he has declared himself eligible for the draft because this past year, his first year in college, he averaged 2.4
points.
Yeah, almost 3 points a game, which is like pretty amazing. Here's what I thought was interesting. He has been listed on every roster since high school at 6'4". He shrank 3 inches. Because they do actual measurements. Did you see that he shrank?
I did not see that. No, but just watching him play, I don't watch him a ton, but I've seen some of the highlights. There's no way he's 6'4".
He's 6'1". He is 6'1".
There's no way.
They measured him. He is 6'1". You see him next to his dad. There's no chance he's 6'4". So here's my question. You were a good ball player in high school. I was terrible. I didn't play after 9th grade, but you were pretty good. What was your playing height versus your real height?
That's funny because when we did measurements, I'm trying to remember, I think it was senior year. We did it in shoes. So, I remember coming out at 5'9", and I was so excited. Because 5'9" is an average height for an American male. And so I thought I finally got there. I'm 5'9". Now when I go to the doctor, there's obviously you shrink as you get old. I'm guessing, but I'm more like 5'7.5".
Right. So I saw a meme the other day. It was on May 7th, and it was It was a meme that said, "Hey, today is 5'7", 5'9" if you're a male."
I resemble that comment.
That was awesome. Yeah. I was, in my head, I was 5'10" forever. And I don't know why I didn't round it up to 6 feet, but I didn't, but I was 5'10" forever. I have never been 5'10" in my life. There's no way. I was probably just a hair over 5'9". Now I'm about 5'2". I'm shrinking quickly.
All I know for sure is I'm taller than Greg. I can guarantee that. And that's,
well, you got to grab what you can, even if it's a tiny little thing like Greg's height.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we need to move on. We're running out of time. But I don't know if you saw this, but General Motors Cruise, it's their driverless car. Google has Waymo, and there's a few of those out there. But General Motors has one called Cruise. They're restarting their program in Phoenix after they were banned from California. I don't know if you saw that, but in San Francisco, I guess one of them dragged a guy for like 30 feet. I don't know the circumstances, but California went, that's it. We're done. You're not going to do that anymore. So they're starting it back up in Phoenix because apparently Phoenix doesn't care. And
they don't care.
And something about wider roads and less traffic. But anyways, so my question to you is, would you want to ride in a driverless car? Like if you were living in Phoenix and you put in your Uber and you want to go to the airport, it's a 35-minute drive and a car pulled up with nobody in it. I had a friend actually do this the other day. Would you get in it?
Absolutely. No question. We were out. Oh yeah. We were out there last summer or sometime we were out there and I saw some of the driverless cars. You recognize them right away because they still have the big antennas on top of them and they're weird looking. And I thought, man, and they're taxis, right? Or Ubers. I wanted to ride one. Sherry was like, I'm not doing that. It wouldn't bother me at all. I'd love to do that.
See, I don't know. I mean, it goes to your antisocial, kind of socialness that you would want to be in a car. If you could ultimately eliminate every other human being that you cross paths with on your travel, you would probably be happy.
People I don't know and don't want to get to know. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. I mean, I think I might try it, but I also thought about, it seemed like just a few years ago, it seems like 3 or 4 years ago, driverless cars were coming. It was going to happen. Elon Musk guaranteed it. I thought, hey, you're never going to have to teach your kids to drive anymore because these driverless cars are going to take over and we're just on the cusp of doing it. And turns out we weren't. We're not even close to it. I mean, they're saying probably another 20 to 30 years before this thing actually works and doesn't kill people and you can rely on it. So it didn't really pan out like, we thought it would. And I think it would be great if it did. So it got me thinking when it comes to church, we got to make everything kind of come back to this, but what innovations have we got excited about in the church world? And they were the next thing. It was going to happen. It was going to change the way we do ministry, and it never worked out. I was just thinking, I think we've talked on here, hologram preachers. That was going to be the thing. I remember somebody experimented with Andy Stanley, and he was going to hologram at a conference. And that's going to be the next thing. Didn't happen. Just like a year ago, Bitcoin offerings, like being able to offer Bitcoin so you could do your offering. And maybe some churches are doing that, but it just didn't seem to happen. Do you remember the virtual church where I forget what the name of the program was, but you could build a Second Life, where you could, build a church, and I actually attended one of those. It was really, really weird, but that was going to be the thing. That didn't happen. So what about you? What are some things that we thought were going to pan out and maybe didn't quite hit the mark?
Yeah, I don't know that I have any beyond what you listed. I was thinking about that Second Life. We were in a community with Life Church in Oklahoma. We were in a community with them when Second Life was a big deal, and they created a virtual campus. And if anyone could do it, I mean, they did it the best. And they may still have it going. It's very possible, but it never went anywhere. Like it's kind of like the whole metaverse thing, which, there's bits and pieces of, but I still think it's going to happen. Speaking of which, have you checked on your NFTs lately? Like your Bored Ape, NFTs. And I've actually heard some of that's come back up a little bit, but There's been many times though, Chris, when I thought, okay, everything changes now. Like this is church is just not going to be the same anymore after this. And the biggest one was 2020, and everybody had to shut down. Everybody went online. And then I started seeing churches, they were laying off people in their family ministry, kids ministry, so that they could buy more equipment and hire more people, because everything was going to be online church going forward. Like many churches, and they may still say this, but many churches were saying we are an online church with physical locations. Like that was a very popular kind of thing that went around. And then physical and digital together, which always sounded like a disease to me. Like you go to the doctor and I'm having trouble with my phygital. But anyway, that's my own personal thing. I'm not saying all that's dead, but I will say 4 years out, what I'm seeing is churches are ramping up what they did before. Like we're seeing in-person attendance really grow. We're seeing family ministry grow. I don't know what's happening with online ministry. I know the church I work with, significant number of people come every week. We don't do the multiplier thing like, oh, if there's one device, I'm sure the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is watching. So, but we have about 900 devices on for about 30 minutes every week, but we aren't doing anything with it. They're there. We're just not doing anything with it. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Everything changed in 2020 and then nothing changed. I wonder, I'm sure you've experienced that. Was that a bad thing or not?
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. And what's interesting is some churches, there's been a couple of prominent churches that have decided to shut down their online, church. They've decided, to even go the opposite direction and not even maybe have just a stream, but not have an online, presence, which is just weird to me. Mm-hmm. But, I remember consulting with churches through 2020 and 2021. And the buzz was, we need to hire a digital pastor. Got to hire a digital experience pastor, quit spending money on the in-person weekend. We're going to switch all that. And obviously, you're right. Things have gone back to it. Now, the church that I serve at, Harvest, already had a very large online presence, but even they started recording a service just for the online during the week and separate message, and all of that's done. It's back to just kind of the normal stream. So, and I remember for my world, I wrote an article in 2020 about how the future of the church is all small groups all the time. That the big gathering is dead, that nobody's going to want to get together in thousands and thousands. So you better start building these small group house churches. In fact, wrote one article. I was at Lifeway, and USA Today almost optioned it to run it, and they decided not to. And actually, I'm kind of glad they didn't. But so yeah, I think and I don't, whether it's a bad thing or not, I think we need to quit trying to predict the future of how ministry is done. I think there are signs and things that we can lean into, but we can do absolutes. This has happened in the world. We will never do this way again, or, this will never work again. I just don't think we can do that anymore. One of our sponsors for this episode is Chemistry Staffing. They help churches find healthy staff members. You see, they match each potential candidate with your church's specific theology, church culture, DNA, and personality to find the right person for your specific role. They believe that the formula for church staff success is a vibrant church plus a healthy staff equals long-term fruitful ministry. So if you're getting ready to start the search process at your church, or maybe you're in the midst of a search that needs a little extra help, look them up. They'd love to hear your story and see if there's a way that they can help you find your next long-term ministry staff member. And you can get a free call just by going to chemistrystaffing.com. Again, that's chemistrystaffing.com.
Yeah, so that's probably enough, Chris, about what we think should change and not change in the church. I think you said, let's not ever predict anything again. So I'm not good at prognosticating basketball or the church, so I'll probably let that go. But let's talk to somebody who does have a pretty good feel for what's going next, what's next in the church. We have one of my friends with us. Most of you probably know who she is, but let's connect with Kadi Cole. Hey, I'm excited today, as I mentioned a while ago, to have my friend Kadi Cole with us. Kadi, hi, first of all. Good to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on the show. Great to hang out with you guys.
You know, I don't know that you would remember, but I remember when I met you. I was back in, you were one of the executive pastors at Christ Fellowship. Mm-hmm. I was with Leadership Network, just kind of helping them with some facilitation stuff. And we did a cohort, which of course Christ Fellowship was a part of, around multi-site. And I didn't really know much about Christ Fellowship at the time. And I didn't know you, obviously. And I just remember Kadi being in a room, and you remember those days. It was all dudes. Like, it was all dudes and Kadi. Like, it just was. And that's not a good thing. It just was. And so, and when you get a room of all dudes and one lady, we could talk about this if you want to, but we tend to not pay that much of attention. That's just how it is. And I remember you started talking about the leadership development stuff you were doing with Christ Fellowship, what you were building. And I remember, like, it was a funny thing. It was like the room goes dead silent and everybody was like, I need to talk to Kadi Cole. Like, I don't know who this is, but she's doing stuff we're trying to figure out. So yeah, I was thinking today, gosh, that was probably 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's probably right. Mm-hmm.
And then we've crossed paths so many times. You did some work with Leadership Network for a period of time, and my wife worked there, and you guys met through some of that kind of stuff. And then for a while, I was involved in Exponential, and you spoke at Exponential a lot. And so we'd cross paths there. And so there are people that I like. There's two levels of friends in ministry for me. There's the true friends, which I hope you consider. I consider you a true friend because I've
definitely
known you for a long time. We've met in a lot of different situations. And then there's the conference friends where in the green room, you're like, hi, it's good to see you. And how's but I don't think that's that way. I was so glad when you said when you had time to spend with us on our goofy little podcast, because I know you wouldn't necessarily say this, but you are one of the leading voices on leadership in the business world and in the church world, and in a lot of areas, but specifically in how to develop what I call a diverse leadership culture, like how to diversify from, and you're not going to use this language, I will, a circle of 55 to 65-year-old men white men who sit around and figure things out. And I can say that because I am one of those guys that's in those circles a lot. And you're helping us figure out how do we grow that. So thanks for coming on. And the first question I have for you, Kadi, has nothing to do with that. So I told you that we talk a lot on here about watching sports and NBA and NFL. What do you do? What do you enjoy doing when you're not out changing the world? I don't know if you're into sports or there's something that you just have fun doing when you're not speaking, writing, consulting.
Well, yeah, thanks. That's actually funny. I rarely get that question, but I do actually have a life outside of church ministry, if you can believe that. So I'm a pretty avid family person. So I have a 20-year-old son who I adore. He's away at college now. So I drive up there and see him a lot. I'm really connected to my family. So I spend a lot of time with family. I work on my house. I actually work out and do sports myself, but I don't watch a lot of spectator sports. I tried to really get into it, especially when I had a son. I'm like, oh, we're going to be a sports family. My husband is really into sports. And, so I did it for like a year. And then at the end of the year, even though my team like won the championship, they all left, they changed coaches. I knew nobody the next year. And I was like, I think I'm out. I just don't have the heart to like learn all these people again. So, I watch from afar, but other than that, I enjoy, my friends. I grew up in Montana. I live in Florida now, which is very flat. So I try to get to the mountains and go hiking whenever I can, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I was going to ask you, you're still in South Florida, right?
Yeah.
And it's a shame that you don't follow sports that closely, because I love just making fun of Miami Heat fans specifically.
You go
Miami
for it. Make fun
Heat
of them
fans.
all you want.
Yeah, but you don't care. You just don't care. Wow. What team was it that won the championship? Which team?
It was Tampa Bay when Tony Dungy was the quarterback.
Yeah.
That was my first year. My son was a brand new baby. We all had the jerseys. I decided to follow him because I'm in Florida and he's a great Christian leader and I loved his book. And then he left afterwards, broke my heart. So never went back. You
would laugh. Sherry has become an avid Denver Nuggets fan. Like
nice.
They're in the playoffs right now, and we both do, but she builds her whole day around the Nuggets schedule. Like, and you know Sherry well, and that's just not her, but she's into it. That's so awesome. Weird, hard segue, but I talked a minute ago that I think you are one of maybe a handful of people that I think are really helping, especially church leaders, business leaders, but church leaders especially, kind of figure out this how do we diversify our leadership? If you were to look at the churches that you see, and maybe you've worked with them or not, but what are the big mistakes that we make? Like when we go, we need more women leaders or younger leaders, or we need different demographics in our leadership. What are the biggest mistakes that we make in trying to do that?
That's a great question. Well, I think first off, if we're asking that question, that's the right question. Like, how can we do that? I think the first mistake is we have a lot of churches still not even asking that question. And when we sort of look at the future of the church and this next generation coming up of future leaders, but mostly future church goers, people that we're trying to reach who are growing up as younger millennials, Gen Z, especially Gen Alpha, diversity is just a normal part of their daily life. It's even in places like Montana, where I grew up, which doesn't have a lot of racial diversity, but the Midwest, like areas that we don't always see a lot of racial diversity, those numbers are climbing dramatically. And in their mind and their connection with each other through the internet and social media, diversity is a must-have, and they smell it out when they don't see it. I don't think those of us who grew up without that kind of connectivity can appreciate how non-diverse and homogenous we are through their eyes. And so if we aren't asking that question, we're really sealing our fate in the future, in the next 20 years. So if we are asking that question, I think sometimes we can easily feel a lot of pressure by segmenting people as if we're doing some sort of demographic study. So I got to have 50% women. I better have 50% black people. Plus then like Hispanics are kind of coming. And so we better make a 50% brown. So like we have all these categories that we have to like check boxes. And that's not really how diversity works. What we're really trying to do is undo the kind of group think that happens when you have a majority mindset. So if you look at your team of leaders, and let's just say you have 10 of them and they're on the website and they all look kind of the same. And, just hypothetically speaking, let's just say they're all like white 50-year-old men, partly balding, glasses, golf shirt, just hypothetically speaking, the research really tells us that we want 30 to 40% of that leadership team to not be like the majority. So you could have a couple women, you could have someone who's older, you could have a couple people younger. You're looking to try and break up the group think. That's what allows you to have the power of diversity and kind of harness the benefits of greater creativity, better problem solving, more productivity, better morale and retention with your highest level leaders. That's what allows us to think bigger and broader and gain the power of that. So I encourage leaders to be looking at all metrics of diversity. I tend to champion women because I think it's the area that's the easiest to move on, mostly because women are the majority of our churches. And we have a lot of really qualified, strong leaders that we just haven't put into formal roles. But it really is the gateway opportunity for diversity of all kinds. So if you start looking at those metrics and moving it, look at gender, look at age, look at race and ethnicity. Please look at physical capacity and make sure you're representing your community. You've got lots of different voices from lots of different perspectives.
Yeah, that's so good. It's funny you were talking about the groupthink, right? So I was talking to a friend, and Katie, this, I hope this isn't a topic for me just because Kadi Cole's on. Like I beat this drum.
You have been a great champion of this my whole life. Yes.
That's all I wanted to hear. But no, I had a friend, I was talking to him about this, and his executive team, of course, is what you described, a bunch of dudes in golf shirts and balding and all that kind of stuff. But And I was talking to him about, bringing at least a smaller church, at least one woman onto the team. And of course he threw some theology stuff at me, and I was like, I'm not talking about the theology. Like, I'm talking about sitting around a table trying to make decisions. There's no scripture that you can bring up that says women can't be a part of that. And so then he said, and this was interesting to me, he said, well, if we bring a woman into the environment, it just changes the conversation and how the conversation is conducted. And I said, thank you. Like, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, how is that a bad thing? Like, and I know, Chris, I mean, you've been in lots of circles where it's all guys sitting around, and you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's a different conversation. It's not a better conversation. It's not a diverse conversation. It's an easier conversation sometimes. But yeah, I love talking about group thing. So Katie, this is going to probably be, I was just thinking about this week, and you travel a lot. Like, you've been all over. We ran into each other in England a few months ago, and you've been, of course, all over the U.S. I've been in South Florida for quite a while, but that's just where your house is. You work with churches everywhere. I'm just curious. I have no idea the answer to this, but do you find regional differences in how, especially church congregations or pastors, embrace non-traditional leaders or leaders who don't look like the leaders they normally have? Are there regional differences?
Oh, 100%. I would say that's probably the biggest indicator of where things are at in terms of diversity is what's the cultural context of your city that you're in. We found in our research for the book that really women moving into higher levels of leadership had almost nothing to do with theological viewpoint. It didn't have anything really to do with the size of the church or the mission of the church or even the model of ministry. It really came down to personal practices of a leader, and the biggest indicator of that is the region that they either grew up in or are serving in now. And so we found some very strong egalitarian churches who had almost no women in leadership. And when I interviewed them about it, because I found that really fascinating, they said, well, our culture isn't ready for it, right? We're deep in the Bible Belt. Our culture wouldn't embrace it, even though theologically we actually would champion women. Our denomination would happen to be founded by a woman, but we don't feel comfortable putting women on platform or giving them pastoral titles. And I don't really have a theological horse in the race. I try to be very supportive of every theological view. I do want to champion women within that view. And so, we do have some resources on my website, including a theological cheat sheet that's very helpful in sort of taking us out of this binary conversation that I'm either for women or against women. That's how it tends to kind of feel. I really try to make a case that there's a spectrum, and a big piece of that is how your local culture plays into that and how you as a leader, what do you really believe, and are we actually living out what we believe? That's where we waste the most energy and the most capacity of all of our leadership, is on sideway energy where our theology and our culture of our church doesn't align. Even in conservative churches where they have a really clear theology about women, but they're maximizing it and their culture matches their theology, we see women thriving at all levels of the organization, including the executive team. And I'm talking very strong complementarian SBC churches that have a lot to say about women and what they can and cannot do. I find a lot of churches doing a great job with that. And like I said, I find sometimes very strong egalitarian churches who have almost no women in leadership. It really is about how well are we living up to our theology and maximizing women's contribution within that theology. It's
funny you say that, because Chris and I grew up in the Assemblies of God. The Assemblies of God is a very egalitarian from the beginning theology, and not militant. I wouldn't put it that far, but that is a lead thing for them. Our grandmother was an ordained pastor in the Assemblies of God. Sherry was ordained at Seacoast, so not in the Assemblies of God, but very egalitarian. Chris, from early years, can you think of anywhere you saw a woman in a significant leadership position in any of the Assembly of God churches we were a part of?
No. That's a really good point. Just because you allow it and your theology is okay with it doesn't mean that you're going to just naturally do it. So that's an interesting thought.
And one of the churches we were in was in St. Louis, Katie. So not traditionally Southern, very different. You know what was interesting? I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but we had a friend in South Carolina that came out of he was a CEO of Fortune 500 company. He retired, came in, he volunteered with us at Seacoast. And when he saw inside the church world, how few women were in roles of leadership, he was stunned because the business world crossed that path years ago. And again, it wasn't a theological thing at all. And it wasn't just Seacoast. I'm not attacking Seacoast. He saw across the board, and there's always a translation between business world and church world. Like there always is. That was the thing that he got, that and to him, the speed of change in church is very, very slow, but there's a reason for some of that. Like we kind of have some things that never change, and that's kind of a part of it, but yeah, so it was interesting.
Yeah, I think, to your point of women sort of changing the dynamic of a leadership team, I think that's 100% true. I actually have a lot of compassion for men who grew up with sort of this idea of, I'm going to do ministry with my best friends, my college roommate and my brother-in-law and my neighbor or whoever. And we're going to have this brotherhood. And that's what my future is going to look like. And it's always going to feel like the best small group ever. And I think that's a really unfortunate model, not just around diversity, but I just see pastors struggling to make that happen in their life over and over again. And it just never quite gets realized, or someone gets a job somewhere else, or they get called to another church. And it's the paradigm breakdown of what I thought I was promised in this doing life together culture versus what I'm actually ending up doing, which is having to negotiate differences between people, having to manage a bunch of budgets, having to run a bunch of buildings. Is anything going to actually turn out the way I promised? And I remember I mostly have led men in my experience, but I did have one small team when we started our leadership program of just women. And we had 4 women, and we moved at the speed of light, and we could get so much done. Then we added a guy to the team, and everything came to a screeching halt. And we could not figure out, it took us 3 months at least just to find our groove together. And it was such a powerful lesson to me because I ran all these groups of men, all the campus pastors all reported to me, 9 of them. And I ran a bunch of other teams and had no problem. But this one team that was all women, we added a guy, man, it just broke our systems. And so I have a lot of empathy and compassion for leaders who are trying to make the shift, knowing it's going to cost their own personal productivity, kind of that hum of the team that you've probably been perfecting, and even maybe your dream of what you thought this would feel like as you were leading. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to hold back, but it is a bit that you have to work through as a person. You have to be kind of up for the personal sacrifice of actually leading into the next iteration of what church is going to be to really reach our communities.
Right. I was just thinking as you were saying that, excuse me. It's kind of like where Jesus said, hey, I tell you what, I'm going to have 12 of you hang out with me all the time. And how about if one of you is a tax collector and one of you is a Jewish nationalist, and let's just hang out. Let's have dinner. That was uncomfortable, awkward. Yes. I'm sure the meals were really, really not fun. But Jesus felt that having a diversity of leaders for the mission of what he was trying to do. He wasn't doing it for diversity. He was doing it for the mission. Right. And so, yeah, sorry. Not
well, and God tends to sprinkle leadership giftings and callings in ways we don't expect them or want them to go. And so a lot of times we have to choose to actually bring the right gifts to the table, not the right people we want to have the right click with or make it easy and have lunch with. We have to choose. That's why being on mission helps you make that decision, because chances are God brought the resources. It just may be in unexpected packages.
So good. So I have really the reason I wanted you to come here is I need you to help me with a leadership challenge. So, what I have noticed.
Is this your way of getting out of the coaching fee? Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Clever. I like this strategy. I like this strategy.
Oh, heck yeah. Oh, yeah. I haven't paid in years. That's why we created the podcast. Yeah. Here's my dilemma. So, I do try to invite women into leadership circles as much as I can. And this may just be my experience, or probably stereotypical, but I have found that many times, especially mostly with women who are not used to being at that table where it's mostly women or mostly men, they will be very quiet. Sometimes they will wait for someone to ask their opinion. And if you get 5 guys in a room, no one's going to ask your opinion, because they're all going to express their opinion without being asked. And so I don't know if that's a typical thing, but if I see that happening, like, how do I help? Like, how do I bring both the guys to the table in a better way, but also how do I help that lady better integrate into that team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very common experience. And I would say probably one of the things I've tried to work on in the last couple of years is now that we have so many more open doors and tables open to women, is helping women step up and actually be at the table and show up well. So I would say for you as someone leading the room, part of what's important is to make sure you're taking time to actually elicit feedback from everyone in the room. It doesn't really help if you have this big, dynamic, fast-paced, interrupting leadership conversation, which is usually how those things go. And then you stop and say, hey, Katie, what do you think? Like, right, just singling her out and putting the whole focus on her isn't quite right. She needs to learn how to be a part of that discussion. But if you go around and you're like, Geoff, I just want to hear, like, remind me exactly what you think about this. Chris, tell me exactly what your opinion is. Katie, what is your opinion on this? I want to make sure I hear everybody clearly. If you go around and just take the time to make sure you hear from everyone, I have a lot of thumbs up going on in my Zoom call here. If you take the time to make sure everyone has a chance to share their full thoughts, chances are there are some other people who are getting overlooked also, but that really helps give her platform that's equal with everyone else. And so those are some things you can do in the meeting, making sure if someone's cutting her off, especially if you're a teammate, the most powerful impact happens from teammates. When they say, hey, Chris, I noticed you just interrupted Katie. Can you please go back and hear from her? Or Geoff, great job taking credit for Katie's idea. We'll all, make sure that's noted in the notes. Like, just helping, stand up for the things that are usually pretty obvious when someone gets, steamrolled or cut off or something like that. On the private side, if you're supervising one of these gals, I think it's really important to sit and have a conversation and be like, hey, how's this meeting going for you? Do you feel like you're getting to say, like, I would start with, what's your experience? Is there anything you're wanting to do differently yourself? And help her with some really constructive feedback. Most feedback that is given to men tends to be constructive. Like, hey, Geoff, I noticed in that meeting you didn't speak up at all the whole time. We really want to hear your opinion. So sometimes you got to get in there and just, like, when someone else takes a breath, you got to interrupt for whatever reason. Different leadership cultures operate differently. And I think part of that's maleness, but I also think it's mostly higher level leadership, because I've been in executive teams of women. We all interrupt each other also. So it's more, your brains move faster. The dialogue moves faster. You got to kind of stand up for what you want to say in those rooms. So are you showing up the way you want to? And if not, here's how I'm seeing you show up. And I want to just give you some coaching tips. So sometimes we give great coaching to men, but we give very vague praise to women. We're like, so glad you're in the meeting. All right, keep going, because she probably is going to say something like, well, I'm a little insecure. I'm not really sure if I can speak, or I'm not really sure if they want to hear me. And we can get sidetracked by her insecurities instead of focusing on her competencies. So the thing that builds confidence is competency. So don't be dissuaded by all the things going on in her head. She has to navigate that on her own. Give her skill sets. Hey, here's how you interrupt. Here's how you speak up. Here's how you get something on the agenda. Here's how you bring up a topic. Here's a way that you can push back on that. You got to show up with facts. You got to show up with a handout. You got to put it in bullet points. I'm not going to read 6 pages. Don't talk for 30 minutes. Like, make your bullet point. You have to teach the competencies of operating at a high level of leadership. Those are the things that are going to help her. And then I really think this is where female coaching comes in. I really am not a big person on, like, women have to lead women and men have to lead men in these areas. But I do think women who have been at these levels are the women who can help other women know how to swim in those territories. So I would say invest in that. Most guys, when they go to their church staff meeting, have a room full of people who will mentor them and invest in them and can coach them. Women show up and they probably have almost no one, or they're the person in charge of mentoring all the women on the team. So one of the best things you can do is invest in great female coaches for your high level leaders, because they need what all the other guys are getting inherently by being on staff.
I love
So
that
good.
in this conversation, Geoff, that she instinctively knew that you steal ideas. That is just something that is natural and you do. And thanks, Katie, for calling that out. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That.
We like to speak truth around here.
Yeah. And thanks for interrupting me, Chris. That was very helpful. That was great. Thanks for dragging Katie in on our own personal sibling problems. So that was good. And also, Katie, thank you for all of that. I took notes. There's a blog post coming out as soon as this is over. And yeah, no credit to you. No, I'm not doing that. Hey, we just got a couple more minutes. One, you mentioned the book, you mentioned the resources on your website. We'll link all of that in the show notes. What's your favorite way? And you speak at conferences, you write, you do a lot of different things. What's your favorite way to add value to the local church?
My favorite thing that I do is create strategies and programs that help us get over ourselves. I think a lot of times churches have a lot of big ideas. We have big visions. We don't always have the way to execute them. And it tends to break down in the execution at the local church level. So that's where I try to spend my time. That's why a lot of my resources are very practical. They're very like these 3 steps, do these 6 things. Here's a handout your team can talk about. Because I think in theory, we all are on the same page. In execution, we're at various levels of success.
Oh, so good. All right. Last question. We opened with what you like to do for fun. So this question you might not like as well, but I think it was last week, maybe it was this week, you were on Carey Nieuwhof's podcast, and Carey's amazing. Love his podcast. Now you've been on our podcast. Honestly, Katie, which is a more enjoyable experience? I mean, would you rather be with Carey or with us?
The sarcasm here is so much stronger, which is my preferred language of leadership. So I got to say, I'm going.
Carey's got that Canadian nice going on.
No, that's great. I picked up in one of your answers deep sarcasm. I'm like, you could be one of the Surratt brothers. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Love everything that you do. Like I said, we'll link in the show notes, and really recommend you guys take a look at that and look at the resources that Katie offers. And again, I just want to reiterate, obviously helping integrate women into leadership is a big piece, but Katie is brilliant on any form of strategy and leadership at the church level. So yeah, check it out. Thanks again, Katie. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about one of our sponsors, and that's Intentional Reach. And they could be your partner in turning audio and video sermons into top-notch transcripts. And they specialize in sermon transcription, podcasts, conferences, interviews, webinars. If it's spoken, they transcribe it. And these transcripts can boost your online reach up to 3-fold. Search engines love text, and transcripts make your content more searchable. Plus, at about $400 a month, it's a cost-effective way to expand your audience. And they're not just for websites. They can be repurposed for newsletters, blogs, social media, and more. So check it out. Go to intentionalreach.com and hit Get Your Transcripts today. All right. That was so good from Katie. So practical. And like Geoff, you said, we will put notes in the show notes and links to her website, links to her resources and her book. And I'm just glad that she called you out for who you are. She saw that in that conversation that she needed to speak truth into your life. And so I really appreciate that.
Something that probably hasn't come up enough in this podcast, but did you know Mom and Dad never liked you? Like, I don't know if it may be late to bring it up, but they never really liked you.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I was the favorite and I was the baby. So, get over it.
Still.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Surratt Brothers. And, again, we would love if you would just, subscribe. That way it shows up in your podcast app every week, and leave us some comments or notes. We'd love to hear what you'd like to hear on this podcast. And again, we will see you next week.